fit.
When you're the new kid, you kind of got to come out swinging if you don't want to get lost in the crowd. That's why Colorado-based Revel Bikes climbed off the school bus packing designer linkages from Canfield Brothers, accomplished staff from RockShox, Trust Performance, and Y Cycles, and 2 sleek full carbon frames. We brought one of them, the Rascal, to Tucson, Arizona to ask, did the world really need another bike company?
So the linkage that Canfield designed is all about this perfect anti-squat value, which is 100. It's a perfect number. And that's well, I mean, it's what we call, when we say a bike is a hover bike, it's because it has this perfect 100% anti-squat, where it totally isolates pedaling forces from suspension input.
And it does a pretty good job of that. Like, I thought it climbed really well without having any crazy pedal feedback. I was able to power through either flat chunky stuff or uphill chunky stuff.
I would agree with you that it didn't feel as though I was getting pedal kickback, but I did notice that I was getting a little bit of swing, a little swing set effect from my hover bikeness. There was some bobbing when I would get out of the saddle and start pedaling hard.
Yeah, I just didn't feel that. I guess I just wasn't perceiving it like you guys were.
Maybe you just have a perfect pedal stroke that's better than the rest of us.
Yeah, I've practiced those circles.
I think that's one of the disadvantages of a bike with that perfect anti-squat, is that unless you can really isolate your body weight input into the bike, it's going to react to it a little bit. So I found that I wanted to pedal more calmly on this bike to keep it efficient. And if I did, it did what it was supposed to.
We had kind of an interesting course though, in that you didn't really have a ton of chances to pedal calmly, because they were short bursts of really rocky sections that you all of a sudden had to get up and go.
Though the Rascal's focus on flotation left us a little split on exactly which kind of climbs it's best for, we did agree on which kind of riders, and that'd be almost all of them.
For me, it wasn't quite as long of a reach bike. It still had a long wheelbase though, so I felt very centered within this. I immediately noticed that it felt a little more stable with that longer wheelbase, but it was interesting because it wasn't just this super bias of most of the spacing is in the front of it.
I mean, you look at a lot of those numbers, so moderate reach, long wheelbase, moderate chainstay. Like, it's not like the Fuji that's crazy long. It's not like the Pivot that has relatively conservative head angle. It's a middle of the road kind of a bike.
Well, it has a pretty slack head angle for a bike of this category, doesn't it? I mean, 66 is pretty slack for like a mid-travel 29er.
It's funny to think that Trail now has a 66-degree head angle. Not that long ago, Trail, a year and a half ago would say 68. Oh, that's a trail bike. Not anymore.
Yeah, and so I mean, so it has a mix of these geometry numbers that add up to like something that feels comfortable to ride. Like I didn't have a learning curve because the reach felt relatively normal.
This is one of those bikes that I had to take an extra run on. And we run into bikes like that. The first thing I think of is the Norco site. It's something that we had at the Bible a couple of years ago. We spent more time talking about it and riding it than any other because we were trying to nail down what this bike is good for. And I think we found the same thing with this one. It's this really all around, like you say, middle of the spectrum sort of a bike.
And it's funny because we the way that we end up processing that is in a muted sort of non-excited way. But we should be excited about the fact that it does everything well, right? It's not the best ascender in the class, it's maybe not the best climber in the class, but it does both of those things so even-handedly that I feel like it's a great all-around bike that anybody can own.
There was one area where I felt like this did stand out for me, and that was cornering with the very centered rider positioning with a slightly longer wheelbase. Really felt like it held the line well, and it was easy to take a drawn-out corner at speed. So, what do you guys think about value? Along comes value at $8,700.
I mean, this is kind of a boutique-y brand. Look at the thing. It looks like it needs a velvet bag around it, right? Crown Royal style.
Yeah.
It's a consumer direct bike, and we hear that, we think about brands like YT and Commensal and Canyon, and it's tricky to compare this to that. It's a small brand. It's a name brand linkage that they had to pay extra for, so it's kind of an apples and oranges sort of thing. But it's not a mind-blowing value.
Right. I mean, it comes in like a pretty expensive Evoc case. I think most people probably don't travel with their bikes frequently enough to like have an Evoc case on hand, but I think it's a nice thing to own.
And it's cool that you get something that's reusable as the way to get your bike.
Yeah,
Comes straight to you, packed up, already assembled, so it's a nice extra touch.
Yeah.
So there's a few options when you pick your build kit on this, just like a lot of small brands, they build them in the US, so you can do the RockShox suspension front and rear, you can do DVO. I just liked seeing a front and rear shock with low speed compression damping.
Totally.
Like it's really important on a bike with this little travel that is kind of asking you to ride it in a way that demands a little bit extra support.
I think this is not like a all mountain trail bike or an XC trail bike. It's like right in the middle.
Maybe it's a sign of these polarizing times and we get a little confounded when a bike is here to please everybody. Despite its name, the Rascal is pretty well behaved. While other cutting-edge brands keep pushing their bikes over the edge, Revel keeps the tech high, but brings it within reach. We've got its full review and the rest of the Bible of Bike Test videos at bikemag.com.